Hello, good morning, agroforesters. Good morning to all the participants and welcome to the last day of the 3 days webinar on agroforestry and the green architecture of the new CAP. This big face talking is the face of Antonello Franca. I am a researcher at the Institute for Animal Production System in the Mediterranean environment. It's an institute of the National Research Council of Italy. I'm talking from Sassari in Sardinia, about 100 kilometers far from Nuoro, the place where the 5th European Agroforestry Conference will be held from 17 up to 19 May 2021. Our institute carries out research activity mainly on silvopastoral systems, participating to European projects such as AgForward, Life Regenerate, Living Agro, and trying to develop innovative management practices in order to maximize the silvopasture productivity and quality, valorize the multifunctionality, and achieve the resilience of silvopastoral systems. Today's sessions of the webinar are focused on the future of agroforestry policies. And it's a great pleasure to me to open this event because I think that we are now into a transition period regarding agroforestry policies in Europe. Even if it's clear the emerging interest of European policymakers, farmers, and overall stakeholders on agroforestry practices, yesterday we discussed in a very interesting working morning about some issues emerging in the application of some CAP rules and measures. So what's going on? Are there new opportunities to agroforestry in the new CAP? Is a new role for research and extension services desirable? Should we think of policies more corresponding to the wishes and the needs of farmers in Europe? I am sure that today's sessions will give us some indications on the ability to reverse the course towards more effective and more attractive policies able to encourage agroforestry in Europe. Today, the webinar is structured in 2 sessions. In the first session, the EURAF President, Patrick Worms, will facilitate the session with speakers coming from different DGs of the European Commission and from WWF. While in the second session, there will be space for a roundtable moderated by Rico Hübner from the Faculty of Landscape Architecture and Landscape Planning of Munich, Germany. So now, it's time to give the floor to Patrick for the third session of the webinar that will end at about 10:20. The mic is yours, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Antonio, for this wonderful introduction and this careful framing of the issues that facing farmers wishing to apply agroforestry and that we're going to be discussing this morning. I am Patrick Worms, the president of the European Agroforestry Federation, and I have the great pleasure this morning of discussing these issues with 4 distinguished speakers, and starting with the least institutional one of all, Javier Ruiz from WWF. Javier is the author of a recently written and well-received report together with the European Landowners Organization discussing how to encourage European landowners to apply agroforestry principles. That will be followed by Emmanuel Petel, who I don't see here yet, but I hope he will be joining us before it will be his turn to speak. Yes, there he is. Bonjour, Emmanuel. If you could open your video for a minute so people can see you, it would be wonderful. Emmanuel is a dear friend of agroforestry and has been a dear friend of agroforestry for many years. And he acts in its favor, or tries to act in its favor, from within DG Agriculture. And he is going to be sharing with us some insights about how the Pillar 1 may or may not have helped in the past, and more importantly, how Pillar 1 may or may not help in the future. That will be followed by Günther Wolf, who is most definitely not here at the moment, but I've seen some email exchanges, so we're optimistic he will be on time. And Günther is from DG Environment, where he's looking at land issues and agriculture, and he'll be taking us through the opportunities for agroforestry in Pillar 2. Last but not least, Frau Christina Muller from DG Climate, and those of you who have participated in the recent roundtables that DG Climate organized in the relationship between land use and climate will remember how fantastically informed and keen Christina was on how to apply these measures, and how she has what a friend of mine would call a quicksilver mind that is always looking for new ways of applying what we know already to help save this little blue planet of ours. So without further ado, let me start by asking Javier to share your impressions. Javier, are you optimistic that at long last, the super tanker called the Common Agricultural Policy is moving away from the rocks into a more sustainable future?
Thanks very much, Patrick, for these kind words of introduction. I am indeed a bit hopeful. I think we have a setting that is maybe not perfect, but it's certainly an improvement compared to past periods of the CP. But let me explain a little bit why I think so. And to do so, I'm going to share my screen. Let me just see if this works appropriately. So now I guess you should be seeing my screen, and let me see if I can put it on a full screen for you.
Yes, we see your screen.
To see perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to run you quickly through this policy brief that we produced, WWF, together with the European Landowners Organization in July this year, that is called Growing Trees on Farmland. You will see that it's truly a policy brief about agroforestry. And we have given it, I wanted to start by commenting on the subtitle that we have given to this policy brief, which is Smart Choices to Plant 3 Billion Additional Trees. So maybe for those of you who follow EU policies will definitely identify where this is coming from. But I think for this particular day today, it was important to explain to you why this funny idea, let's say, of planting 3 billion additional trees is relevant, and why it justifies us publishing a policy brief on the topic. So the whole idea comes from the EU Biodiversity Strategy, which is a document produced by the European Commission back in May this year. And one of the things mentioned in that strategy is that there will be a novel initiative to plant all these 3 billion additional trees in the EU by 2030. So there's a drive by the Commission to achieve this. We still don't have full details of how this is going to be rolled out. We know that there will be a roadmap published by the European Commission again next year in 2021 that will be published together with the EU Forest Strategy. But I wanted to underline that this does not mean that this initiative to plant 3 billion additional trees is purely a forest agenda. I think there's very importantly, it's also an urban agenda. It follows an urban agenda. There's specific mentions on how planting trees could be beneficial in or around cities, and it can also be let's say called the farming agenda. And there's actually some good news there, because there's already explicit mention to the word agroforestry in how this tree planting needs to happen in rural areas. And there's two additional connections that I want to underline there, which is the fact that the biodiversity strategy itself has put a new target to increase what we call landscape features, or what it's called formally, more strictly speaking, it's called high diversity landscape features, to 10% of all farmland in Europe. So there's also a drive there in terms of a target of having more landscape features there. And as we will also hear later about, there's also an initiative, another new initiative launched by the European Commission, which is the EU Carbon Farming Initiative, which also will cover agroforestry. So all in all, let's say that the announcement of this initiative to plant additional trees is a proof of I think what is a strong political momentum, a momentum that is pushed, let's say, from the higher levels of the Commission. It's an initiative that is very largely supported by Commissioner Timmermans, so the lead person for the European Green Deal. So it's really good. It's a momentum we need to use, and we thought both from ELO and WWF that it made sense to try and channel this energy and this momentum towards agroforestry as much as possible. And it was important to do it quickly, because for certain things, as of course this is the common agricultural policy reform happening right now, as you all know, it's important to get the common agricultural policy right, so that this tree planting or this growing of trees can truly happen on farmland adequately. So this is the story that we built in the policy brief. So let me then cover a couple more things. One of them is the fact that we are co-signing this brief between the landowners organization and ourselves. We always thought that it was important to underline that this is not a conservation agenda. This is something that we can work with land managers and landowners we can discuss, and we can quickly, let's say quite quickly, agree on the interest of having more agroforestry in Europe. And I think this is largely appreciated also in Brussels, because it comes a little bit as a contrast to some kind of perceived opposition between stakeholders that we see so much in the debates about the CAP, etc. I think that when we go to the technical details of what we would like to see in terms of land management in Europe, I think there's a large space of agreement, and with the ELO, it's not difficult to achieve that agreement. But of course, that agreement comes with certain conditions, let's say. And I am going to underline in this slide some of those conditions, some of the logic here. One of the first items is obviously that here we are not talking about afforestation in the sense of stopping farming and then potentially stopping the capacity of receive farming subsidies for that land. We are talking about complementarities. I mean, I don't need to explain to you. As agroforesters, you know very well, we are looking about working with the scale of grace, maintaining farming, and still farming together with a lot more trees and shrubs there. So basically, we're not talking about afforestation, we're talking about agroforestation. I think that one second element that is relevant, very relevant in the agreement, or to reach agreement, the space of agreement, is that we shouldn't be only looking at ecological benefits when we are doing things. We need to look jointly at agronomic and ecological benefits. And that implies, of course, that we also need to acknowledge that there may be some benefits if these things are not done appropriately. So then underlining the importance of having an adequate design, an adequate support, particularly through agroforestry advice, so that farmers can really do use the best approach for their land. And of course, I think that it wasn't difficult either to agree on the fact that when you have such an initiative as, let's plant trees for even 3 billion additional trees, there's a risk of doing things wrong. And that's, I think, I don't think I need to elaborate here. You will all remember or have near your situations and the places where you are working, situations where planting of trees has been done with the wrong species, sometimes in the wrong places, and let's underline also the fact that it can be done with the wrong technique. So I mean, there's a lot of mistakes that we have done in the past. I think we need to learn from them. I mean, we don't cover this in detail in the policy brief, but I think we need to underline that things need to be done appropriately. So I have a couple more slides for you.
And you only have about a minute left, Javier.
Yeah. Okay. In the policy brief, on top of the elements I showed to you, I wanted to underline a couple of things. One is that the fact, of course, it's an obvious one, but we are talking about growing trees and not about planting trees. I think this is something you will likely concur also, that this is a long-term process and it's not about planting trees and then letting things go. It's about having the long-term perspective in mind and the adequate support for the long term. The element that is not only trees, that can be also shrubs and other woody vegetation that is planted, and also acknowledging that there's a need for support, because there's a fear of complexity. I mean, you know that as soon as it gets more complex, it gets more rich, it can deliver more, but there's also a fear of complexity on the side of land managers and farmers. So then the need of further research, more demonstration, more exchange, farmer-to-farmer exchange, etc. So basically then the policy brief that is completed by showcasing 5 options to plant more trees, to grow more trees on farmland. There could be more. This is just a selection of them. I just leave them there for you. You will all recognize them, from silvo arables to silvo pasture, fruit orchards. I mean, all these types of intervention. And then I won't go into any detail. I'm just putting it here just because you may get, I'm hoping you will get the presentation available for, the presentation will be made available for participants. And then this is going to be covered now in more detail by the other speakers. But we have, of course, as a policy brief, we have a number of policy recommendations. Part of them, let's say, let me just put them very quickly here for you, are about the common agricultural policy, first pillar, second pillar. This is what we are going to hear about soon. And then a number of other recommendations that are related to the carbon farming initiative. We'll also hear more about it, and about other elements that are not strictly EU legislation, but are more national or regional regulations that also have an impact on the uptake of agroforestry. Just a closing word, Patrick, if I may. I think that sometimes I started this presentation with this idea of, oh, now we need to plant 3 billion additional trees. Where do we do this? Sometimes the way some initiatives or some pushes happen at the EU level. I think we just need to, for the moment, just try to do our best using the existing tools, the CAP and other initiatives. Of course, in an ideal world, this would have been set in a bit more of a holistic and territorial approach, and we would have mechanisms possibly within the CAP, so that the CAP already covers or already accommodates a little bit better all the different demands we have on land management in Europe, like, of course, carbon sequestration, biodiversity, restoration, etc., etc. And in the meantime, I think it's really important that the EU puts the right conditions so that agroforestry can really be taken up a lot more. I like closing with that. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Javier. What I loved in your presentation was the fact that you highlighted the importance of bridging the divide between the land users, the farmers, and the conservationists. And this policy recommendation is a wonderful example of what happens when this divide is being bridged. And I may add personally that I hope that the fact that this divide has been bridged by the European Landowners Association and WWF will help influence the current sausage-making machinery, the trilogue, that is trying to devise this new cap. We know the Commission is pushing hard for a more holistic version of the cap, for a cap that encourages people to do more important things. But we are not yet certain that all of the member states and council, or indeed that the parliamentarians in the parliaments, get it. So, Emmanuel, you represent the Commission.
Yes.
And you hope very much that in the trilogue, your good recommendations will be accepted. Please take us through how you see this in the future.
Okay. Patrick, I have some issue with my presentation. I don't know with how to share with the screen. Maybe I should.
At the bottom of your Zoom, you have a button.
Yes, I have it, but after I just to go in my application, I don't know, a little bit, no, it's not there. I don't know where I have to go.
Have you done this before?
Not completely. Sometimes I have done, but now okay, I push the button, but after I don't know how to go in my application, I would say.
Well, the way it works is you open your presentation. Do you have two screens or one screen?
I have screen. Je dois aller chercher ma présentation. Là. Non. Ok, je l'ai pas.
Non, c'est pas là.
C'est là, je veux. Est-ce que ma présentation est dans Outlook?
Mais je sais pas. Sometimes, if I may help, sometimes, Emmanuel, sometimes the problem is that you have too many screens open.
No, maybe I need to open, maybe first I need to open my presentation. Sorry,
yes.
Because I'm...
Yes, first open the presentation, then click on share screen.
Yeah, maybe it would be better, yes. It's because okay. I will man.
Also, it's necessary to start the video first before.
Yeah. So the process is open your presentation, then open video in Zoom, then click on the share screen button, then select your presentation from the various options that Zoom offers you to share. Well, while we wait for Emmanuel to sort himself out, Javier, I'd love you to prepare a critical review for the debate after the presentation from the Commission, to tell us if, in your opinion, what you're hearing makes you more or less optimistic about what's going to happen in the future. Ah, we can see your screen, Emmanuel.
You see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Tu peux y aller, Emmanuel, tu es prêt.
Okay, sorry for the... no, I will come back on the...
Je vais être là, ok?
Non, laisse-moi. Ça marche pas, chérie.
Pour avancer d'un slide à l'autre, tu dois aller avec ta souris dans l'écran où est la présa.
Donne-moi. Il voit pas là. Je demande s'il voit.
Did you see the chant? No.
No, we see a screen called Common Agricultural Policy Post-2020 and New Green Architecture. You see the title slide only.
Voilà.
Là, comment je fais pour passer?
Appuie 2 fois. Appuie 2 fois. Non. Appuie ici.
Pas ici.
Ah non, enlève-toi, on se voit. Demande s'il voit ou pas.
I think you see my presentation, but after I cannot move the slide, maybe I will...
Previews.
Voilà.
Bah, je sais pas faire. Je sais pas, je connais pas ce système. Je suis désolée.
Ça se fait. No, it's difficult to move the slide for me. I have the slide.
Emmanuel, si tu travailles avec, est-ce que tu travailles avec un seul écran ou avec 2 écrans?
Bah là, j'avais 2 écrans, mais c'est pas la peine de... Peut-être le deuxième écran, je peux pas le... Alors... Voilà.
Ah voilà, ça marche.
Oui, I'm very sorry for this introduction, anyway.
Et maintenant, tu peux rajouter ta vidéo, s'il te plaît. Tu peux rallumer ta vidéo, comme ça on peut te voir en même temps que ça.
Oh non, c'est dingue. C'est un peu long. Voilà. I'm sorry. Look, I will start by the presentation of the new CAP proposal, and as you know, it was released in June 2018, and now is under negotiation. And we have already achieved, I think, a significant step because, in fact, the Council and the European Parliament has made some adoption of this proposal at the end of October. During the week 21 and 24 October. And now, as Javier said, and as Patrick said, we will start by the trilogue, and we have just started the trilogue previous week, and I think it's important to say we will deal with during this coming months on greening architecture. Is the main priority, and the trilogue will focus on that today November, December on this element. It's important to start to remind what is the new green architecture. For us, is very important because it's a key tool where you could address some practices and some holistic practice as agroforestry. For us, it's important to have each time in our tool some different layers, and we'll have still conditionality as the first layer, and above this layer, we are planning to have more opportunity to support some relevant action, more ambitious action, to address some key objectives, and we have put that in our basic act, climate change action, natural resources protection, and preservation and for landscape feature and biodiversity. New conditionality, I will develop after what is for us new conditionality. And but above that, yes, we will provide a new opportunity because we will have an envelope inside of the Pillar 1. Pillar 1 is 80% of the budget of the CAP, is a key element and is support for the farmer, income support. But inside of this Pillar 1, we will withdraw some money to be able to encourage farmers who go above conditionality. It's important as well to underline, in fact, above this framework, we have as well the knowledge transfer, innovation, cooperation. I mean, we insist on the fact we need to have some research project, but we need to have interaction between researcher and farmer. It's a key element in DG Agri. We want to develop that. We have a European Innovation Partnership for this purpose, but in the future, we want to plan some living lab. I'm not in charge in my unit on that, but there is another unit, is a B2 unit, innovation research, will develop that. It's important to underline because we want to have a global approach with some legal instrument, but at the same time to have an technical environment for farmers. I will follow by the fact, in fact, before going in a conditionality, it's important to remind of the fact there is an eligibility criteria. When farmer want to get a direct payment, and he need to respect some eligibility criteria as regards the land situation, what is the shape of the land. And currently, we have still some rule about the number of trees, the dimension of the edges, and sometimes there is some obstacle to introduce agroforestry system in the land management. Now, in the future, we want to give more flexibility for member states for that, to be able to accept on the fact on the land there is some trees or edges, and it is not an obstacle for the production. And we hope in the next CEP, member states will be able to little bit to consider different land management and to promote this different land management, and including agroforestry. Coming back now to conditionality, and conditionality is a big element for us, is the foundation of the green architecture. And as you will see, in fact, is a part of the discussion of the next trilogue on the green architecture, because in fact, we introduce some key elements at the beginning where we need to have some basic requirements across Europe to be applicable by all farmers, depending on the need at the local level. But I will insist on the fact in this list of GAEC, we introduce a GAEC 9, and is a key element to be able to address biodiversity. GAEC 9, it will be a protection of landscape feature, and I think is important for agroforestry. We will protect existing landscape feature, and inside of GAEC 9, we want to introduce an ecological focus area. It's not we call not that like that, but it's just to say in arable in the land at the farm level, we need to have area dedicated to biodiversity, to fill by some landscape feature, by buffer strip, by fill margin. And we insist on that, and we expect to have a minimum percentage to be fixed at member state level or at regional level. But it's a big issue because today there is a discussion with the Council and with the Parliament how to address this percentage, because I think the Council and the Parliament want to come back on existing rule of greening and to come back with existing EFA where there is no effective input for biodiversity purpose. I will move now to the eco scheme and to compare with the Pillar 2, because eco scheme is not completely new. Will support some relevant practice where there is already some support on the Pillar 2. It will be a complementary element in relation with Pillar 2. Today in Pillar 2 you have agro-environmental commitment, and in eco scheme we should expect to have some similar action. But for us is a new element, new support. It will be found from the Pillar 1. It will be no co-funding, and it will be compulsory as it is for agro-environmental commitment. Member state has to set up some action on the eco scheme, and it will be voluntary for farmers. But when we are in eco scheme, we are in a Pillar 1. That means we will address farmer. It will be a payment for genuine farmers, not all beneficiary as we have in Pillar 2. And we will focus the payment on hectare, eligible hectare, on the direct payment. It will not some other hectares on forest or some park. It will focus on farmer activity. And in a Pillar 1, we are more in annual payment, but I will explain we are open to have a multi-annual payment in the context of eco scheme to be more effective. The novelty of eco scheme is to have some opportunity to have two types of premium. One well-known is a compensation for cost incurred, income forgone, as it is in Pillar 2, but we introduce a possibility to have incentivized payment, stop up above the basic payment. It will give more freedom for member state to reward farmer without any obligation for specific calculation. But I need to pass the message. In fact, this top-up, raise a lot of expectation, and I think it's good because it will give some opportunity. But we have to respect the WTO classification of the payment, and we are in a green box. That means we need to avoid any strong link with the production type when we will allocate this incentivized payment top-up. But I think for agroforestry, we could accept on the fact we will support landscape feature, maintenance of landscape feature, or establishment of new landscape feature, and I think there will be no discuss on that. It's just to remind on the fact eco scheme and agro-environmental commitment will be above the baseline conditionality, and we should have a complementary between both schemes. I will go now to the new framework. As Javier said, in May we release both strategy, one on biodiversity strategy and another one farm to fork. And it's important to have this new framework to reinforce, in fact, the objective of the proposal of the Commission as regards the CAP, and to push, in fact, at some stage, member states when they will plan the new CAP. In fact, based on this both strategy, there is a clear target to be achieved by 2030. And we have the use of pesticides, reduction of use of pesticides, reduction of nutrition losses, reduction of sale of antimicrobial, And after a target to achieve on organic farming, 25% and another target from a biodiversity strategy is the fact we need to have a 10% of land dedicated to high diversity landscape feature, as Javier said. But it's important to have, for us, it's important to have this new, I would say, driver. And in the context of implementation of CAP, I will develop this graph because for us it's important in the sense above what we will have inside of the Basic Act, above what we will negotiate, there is a logic how to plan the new CAP. And for us, it's important to underline that we have only single CAP strategic plan made by member state. Today, there is some plan made in the Pillar 2, but today it will be address all Pillar as regards the green architecture. And we will start by a SWOT analysis, as it is today for the Pillar 2, but we have already engaged member state in this sense to identify what is the need, what is where you have some strong deterioration of biodiversity in some territory to fix some priority. And after, we will pay attention how member states design their intervention. We should have a logic intervention. We'll start by the conditionality. I will come back to conditionality. For example, if we start with agroforestry, we need to see how member states will promote agroforestry, but by starting by the GAEC 9, how they fix some basic rule for all farmers, and above this basic rule, above GAEC 9, they can fix additional percentage and to plan some intervention in this sense. They will select some intervention in relation with GAEC, and for each intervention, member state has to plan financial allocation. And here we want to have a specific monitoring. That means for each intervention, we should have a planning for number of hectares impacted, number of farmers, and we will calculate a result indicator, that means the percentage of hectares concerned by the intervention. And we will monitor that year per year. That means member state has to show at some stage the impact of the intervention, how they planning this intervention to address the objective. And inside of the CAP plan, we need to look how member state will address, in fact, the new Green Deal target. Just to have to say there will be a certain consistency between the CAP plan and the new target fixed by the strategy. And in this context, as well with the Green Deal, we pay a strong attention to the new eco scheme, and is the reason why during the negotiation we insist to have a ring fencing for eco scheme. Today there is on the table some percentage, 20% for Council, 30% for the European Parliament, but is I would say it's a new element to compare with the proposal in June 2018. And we are planning to as well to provide some indicative list inside of eco scheme what member state has to address and how what kind of intervention the member state has to address in eco scheme. Just to remind is that we have already released a working document at the council level where we put 4 flagship eco scheme, I would say, as regard organic farming, agroecology, carbon farming, precision farming, and I miss, agroforestry as well, because we start by the fact on the both strategy. We indicate this such a holistic approach, and the commissioner pay attention to that, and he say we should describe what you have behind this such category of holistic approach. And it was important to underline, we release that at the council level. In a way, member state will have a freedom to choose their action, but agroforestry, is agroecology is there, or carbon farm system is there. And we are planning, maybe it's not completely decided, but to have a delegate act to present this, in order to present this list to member states. Okay, maybe I will not go so far, but I will finish by that. On the fact, even there is some discussion on the Basic Act and some negotiation in a trilogue as regards the conditionality, for example. We assume, in fact, the process will not finish at the negotiation. We want to have, I would say, a dialogue with member states and to have a transparency as regards the approval of the CAP strategic plan. It's important to underline that. And as regards the dialogue with member states, the dialogue will not start when we will approve the CAP plan. It has already started by member states. Just to mention, in fact, in DGAGRI, we have some GeoHub, that means some specific team per member state, where we start to discuss with member states as regards their SWOT analysis, or as regards their question for next intervention, the future intervention. And it's important to mention here, we'll deliver at the end of the year for 20 member states list of recommendation. That means we have already made analysis per member state to underline where there is some need, where we have some, say, nitrate pollution, where we have some emission of ammoniac, where we have some issue as regards Natura 2000, where there is a lack of landscape fish across the land. We will underline that in our recommendation in order after to guide member states to set relevant CAP plan and relevant logic intervention. And we hope inside of this approach, member states will be able to address agroforestry action, I would say, for the future. Okay, I will finish here my presentation.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. You ran a little bit over time, but I felt it was so important to understand exactly how the new CAP would support or not agroforestry that we should give you the extra time. Perhaps the only, I would make two comments. One is an encouraging comment because it's clear that you've put in place a process that has the potential to encourage European farming to move in a better and more sustainable direction. Perhaps just one point of disappointment, which is that in the European Green Deal, in these overarching targets you have for minimum percentages for this or for that, there was not an explicit percentage for agroforestry. We agroforesters know that you can apply agroforestry principles across almost all farming systems inside the European Union. And so having that as an overarching target will, we hope, or would have, we hope, encourage the member states to automatically consider this in the case of eco schemes, landscape features, etc. Anyway, thank you very, very much, and I'm sure we're going to have an interesting discussion about this afterwards. But first, we need to understand.
Sorry, Patrick.
Would you like to react?
No reaction. Sorry, but I need to leave because I have another conference after. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, in that case, Emmanuel, let me thank you on behalf of everyone, and if we have specific questions, we'll reach out to you by email.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Have a good day.
Sorry.
Let me pass the floor now to Günther Wolf. Günther, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome, Günther.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Welcome.
Welcome, Günther. So tell us, from the perspective of DG Environment, the second pillar, is it going to get a little bit better than what we have today? The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can see me also now, and I will share my screen.
No, we do not see you, and we do not see your screen. We just see your name. Now we see you.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen now. Okay, share. Yeah. Okay. So you still don't see my screen, I suppose, or?
I see myself on your screen. Ah, there we go. We see your presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So we'll start. Yes. So good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to make this presentation. Benvenuti a tutti e grazie per l'opportunità di fare questa presentazione. Auguri per l'anno forestale in Sardegna. So I'm presenting here the opportunities on agroforestry in the new CAP Pillar 2. We didn't have the opportunity to have an exchange with my colleague Emmanuel Patel on the specific content of the slides, so there may be some repetitions. I will try to avoid it as much as possible. I will start with the basics, but all of that should already be known to you. You know that the Commission proposal was not very specific on agroforestry, but it was nevertheless mentioned. It says in one of the recitals that the objectives of the CAP should also be pursued through support for investments, productive and non-productive, as well as off-farm. And such investments may concern, and that there's a number of infrastructures related to the development, modernization, adaptation to climate change of agriculture and forestry, including access to farm and forest land, land consolidation and improvement, agroforestry practices, and the supply and saving of energy and water. So it is mentioned as one of the objectives. Nevertheless, it remains quite vague on what can be covered for agroforestry, which is sometimes an opportunity, can be seen as an opportunity because there are not many limitations as regards what can be financed under agroforestry. Well, then there are limitations linked to density, etc., etc. So these are the details, but in principle, there's all opportunities open for agroforestry. And also we have a specific mention also under the result indicator R17 of forested land, where we say area supported for afforestation and creation of woodland, including agroforestry. So clearly the framework is there for agroforestry, should be an integral part of the CAP and of the CAP strategic plans, also under the new CAP. As regards the agroforestry interventions in the Common Agricultural Policy, I'm skipping some slides because they were presented already by my colleague Emmanuel Patel. So you have seen the green architecture, what is possible, but can be financed under the Pillar 1, and also the whole philosophy that is behind the new CAP and the green architecture. So I will be very brief as regards the agroforestry interventions in Pillar 2. In Pillar 2, we have the agri-environment climate measure, and under the current CAP, interventions on investments for establishment of agroforestry systems, but also for the maintenance of agroforestry systems can be financed in principle also under Pillar 1 or under 2. Under Pillar 1, we have the new opportunity of eco-schemes, which we understand very interesting opportunities because there will be also much more funds available that can be mobilized. As my colleague explained, Pillar 1 includes 80% of the CAP funds, and Pillar 2, the traditional rural development, under which until now all the agroforestry interventions were financed, only accounts for 20%. So it is clear that we, if we succeed to earmark a sufficient amount of money under Pillar 1, and there are at least promising discussions with the Council and the Parliament, with some caveats, but there could be some potential to have a significant funding under Pillar 1. This can, of course, be complemented with interventions that are already currently financed under Pillar 2, and that could still be continued to be financed under that pillar. The framework for these agro-environmental climate interventions will nevertheless depend a lot on the individual CAP strategic plans, and these CAP strategic plans have to be prepared by the member states. So there's a lot of leeway for the member states as regards the preparation and the design of interventions. What we don't have currently, and legislative proposal is the clear framework that we had in the past. This means the nomenclature of measures. We had in the past all these measures with the chapters. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 8 was on forestry, and then there was 8.2 where normally agroforestry measures could be financed. So we had this very clear framework, which we don't have now. Nevertheless, we expect member states and the CAP strategic plans to have the same type of logic. There may be some room for changing a bit the headings of the sections, but in principle, the options are the same. There's, as in the previous CAP, there's no earmarking for specific interventions under Pillar 2, but there's an in the CAP proposal presented by the Commission, there's an earmarking for environmental interventions of 30%, which would represent an improvement compared to the current CAP, because these 30% would not include areas under natural constraints. And as we know, interventions from under areas for natural constraints, they are paid for areas that are suffering from specific problems. Normally they are mountain areas, but also non-mountain areas where there's, for instance, a steep or arid areas, or also rocky areas that are not very suitable for agriculture. Then there's a compensation that can be paid and is paid under Pillar 2. And depending on the member state, it can represent a very considerable part of the Pillar 2. So this is why we think, as these interventions, ANC interventions, are not genuinely addressing environmental concerns. In some cases they do, but in most cases they don't, that these interventions should not be counted towards this 30%. So this would again mobilize additional funds for agri-environmental measures, and of course agroforestry could be part of that. Now I had a slide on the European Green Deal, which bears also interesting opportunities. I will nevertheless skip them to large extent, because Emmanuel Patel has already indicated the main lines that are relevant. So we have here the main elements of the farm to fork strategy, but which aims to address a number of concerns along the whole food chain, which is an innovative approach. And we have the biodiversity strategy, which is much more targeted on halting the biodiversity decline, with a number of actions. And there I would like to focus also on the new forest strategy. You may have already seen the public consultation on the roadmap, because the EU has announced under the biodiversity strategy that a new forestry strategy will be launched. And this will also include a roadmap for planting at least 3 billion additional trees in the EU by 2030. So quite a considerable amount. And of course, we believe that agroforestry could play a role in this development. And this represents also a big opportunity for agroforestry to further expand. There are not more details yet on how this shall be achieved. We don't expect the CAP strategy plans to formulate very specific conditions on that, but nevertheless, member states should indicate their planned activities with regards to afforestation, and then also indicating what agroforestry can represent to contribute to this target. So coming to the conclusions, well, you know better than me all the benefits that agroforestry bears for the environment, and this is also why it is always one of the practices that are recommended by the Commission in its draft legislation and also in the Green Deal. So we clearly believe that there's a lot of potential for agroforestry, and that it can contribute to the Green Deal and to the achievement of the environmental objectives of the new CAP. The new CAP offers plenty of opportunities to support agroforestry, and the advantage now is that we have the measures under Pillar 1, the new eco schemes, on top of the existing opportunities under Pillar 2. Agroforestry is explicitly mentioned in the draft CAP strategic plan regulation, as I already showed. And this is one of the practices that should be supported, also under the eco schemes. And new delivery model gives member states much leeway in designing their interventions under Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. This is an opportunity, but to seize the full potential for agroforestry, you have to make sure that the CAP strategic plan addresses agroforestry, identifies the potential, and also includes sufficient budget and sufficient measures to really exploit this potential. How to achieve that? Well, you have to identify what we would recommend to agroforesters is to identify measures that are suitable depending on the national context. If there are member states where agroforestry is very well developed, in some cases it's benefiting a lot from CAP measures. In other cases, this potential could still be improved, but we believe that the sector should proactively identify the potential, propose some measures and interventions to the member states, because it is the member states who design their CAP strategic plans, and the CAP strategic plans are now under development. So good opportunity now to get hold of your points of contact and the ministries, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministries of the Environment, to explain the potential you see, the problems you have, and how to accommodate it in the CAP strategic plan. And as the CAP strategic plan, as I say, is being drafted in most member states, this is the window of opportunity to have this dialogue with stakeholders and authorities. So this would be our recommendation. Yes, and with that, I've finished my presentation. Just to have a few points, I think, as Emmanuel Petel also mentioned already, the structured dialogue we have for the member states. So we are receiving already some documents in preparation of the CAP. So starting with the SWOT analysis, in some cases already some ideas for interventions are informally exchanged. And the Commission believes that we have a concern as regards the Green Deal, because the Green Deal was not part of the Commission proposal. Nevertheless, it should be integrated in the CAP strategic plans. So this is one of the reasons why, in the framework of the structured dialogue with the member states, we're submitting recommendations to the member states on how to achieve the 9 objectives of the CAP, 3 of them being environmental, and formulating these recommendations targeted to the specific needs of the member states. And of course, recommendations include, where relevant, also some indications of the potential to develop agroforestry. So these recommendations, nevertheless, are, let's say, abstract enough so that member states have room for maneuver to implement recommendations, but we expect also that it will be an opportunity to influence the process of the development of the CAP strategic plans in the member states, and to ensure that it goes into the right direction. And as regards the environment, we expect, of course, that it leads to achieving the environmental objectives of the CAP and also the objectives of the Green Deal. And as I already said, one of them is the planting of trees. So all in all, we think that it is a very favorable context in which the agroforestry can evolve. But of course, these opportunities have to be seized, and it's not a very straightforward. I leave it here. Thank you for the attention, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. As you rightly point out, it is all due down to the member states now in the strategic plans, and this is a call to us to engage with those member states and help them develop strategic plans that seize those opportunities. You also pointed out, though, that the current farm to fork strategy in the current European Green Deal are not reflected in the proposal for the CAP reform that is currently being debated in trilogue. There was a trial balloon by Executive Vice President Timmermans a couple of days ago that maybe the Commission might just think about potentially withdrawing its proposal and moving forward. Of course, that was just a trial balloon, but it shows the stakes and the high-level stakes that this debate has been taken. That's encouraging to us, even though we maintain that a more activist Commission and a more activist European policy would, of course, be very desirable, simply because the radical change that agroforestry represents for so many farmers and the deep support that they need to adapt something with which they may not yet be familiar. The reason we need to do that is, of course, in part also to help save the planet from our carbon addiction. And that's why carbon farming is becoming such an important issue. And that is something that's been thought about and debated about to quite an extraordinarily deep degree of detail by your colleagues and DG Climate. And so I'm extremely happy that we can welcome Christina Muller to share her impressions of how carbon farming can develop in the framework of what the European Union is trying to accomplish. Christina, the floor is yours. And you are muted. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, now I should be unmuted, and I try to share my screen. You hear me well?
We can hear you and we can see your screen.
Okay, good. So, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Christina Muller. I'm working in DG Climate Action in Unit C3, Land Use and Innovation Finance. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you today to speak about agroforestry as a carbon farming solution. Actually, I wanted to show on this slide, I wanted to list important elements, a selection of important elements under the EU Green Deal, which support agroforestry. The basis clearly builds the common agricultural policy with the basic conditionality, the eco schemes, also the rural development measures. But also I would like to underline the importance, the relevance of the promotion and quality measures, the agricultural market measures and the EU school scheme. We also have structural and regional policy measures and instruments supporting agroforestry and carbon farming. For example, DG Regio supported the Volante project, which quantified the demand for carbon credits generated by certain carbon farming practices in France. The Farm to Fork strategy directly hints at the EU carbon farming initiative. And DG Klima used own budget to procure intelligence services by conducting a 2-year carbon farming study. And I think in his very nice introduction, Patrick already referred to the study and also notably the 2 roundtable discussions. Discussions with carbon farming stakeholders, including those from the agroforestry sector, discussing the preliminary results of the study. DG Klima and DG Environment together also run the LIFE project and earmark money there to support carbon farming, including agroforestry, and the same holds true for the research and development budget. However, I would like to underline once again that all elements, including stakeholder engagement and stakeholder ambition, need to come together in order to make things change and in order to make things work. That things need to change and need to work better shows also this graph. It's taken from the 2030 EU climate target plan. On this picture, you see the ambition which has been communicated with regard to the agriculture and land use sector. So we would move towards carbon neutrality for these sectors combined by 2035. The farm to fork strategy, I mentioned it already. It explicitly hints at the EU carbon farming initiative because this initiative indeed helps to build a fair, healthy and green EU food sector. It helps to secure a fair share of agriculture and farmers in the value chain. It also should help to provide safe and healthy food, diverse nutrition, and working within our planetary boundaries. The major current problems being ourselves exceeding the planetary boundaries as regards biodiversity threats, but also nutrient cycles and climate action. Now, sorry, that was the same. Now we are going forward. So now we are looking at gaps to target. So we want to achieve sustainability for our EU food system. However, we are not yet there. With regard to agricultural income, according to DG Agri, I think the current gap is 60% as regards the reward for farmers' work as compared to average salary conditions in the EU. We also have some evidence from the Eat Lancet Commission, which looked at sustainable diets in Europe. And also here we see significant gaps. And I would like to underline that notably food outputs of agroforestry systems like vegetables, like fruit and nuts, but also vegetables in extended agroforestry systems are missing for the moment. So also from this side, there is a demand for agroforestry. I already shed a quick light on the 2030-2035 climate neutrality ambition, which was depicted in the Climate Target Plan 2030. And as you can see, the carbon sink in the EU would have to grow from now towards 2035 by around 100 million tons. I should mention in this context, when we speak about the carbon sink, that the Commission in the framework of the Circular Economy Action Plan communicated that it will come up by 2023 with certification rules. So rules which explain, which guide in the process of quantifying acknowledged carbon removals. Already the 2006 IPCC guidelines on climate monitoring, already they highlight that agroforestry is a carbon farming opportunity. You see the trees on the picture on this slide showing the main greenhouse gas emission sources, but also removals. The mitigation potential of agroforestry in Europe in priority areas, which have been identified to be less than 10% of the EU utilized agricultural area, has been quantified by the EU Agroforestry Association, so that is no secret for you, as varying between 8 and 235 million tons of CO2 equivalent per year, depending on the concrete solutions applied. And I hope my expectation is that this conference today and the days before should help in the end to conclude which more precise contribution the existing but also future agroforesters in Europe would want to make to the needed carbon sink growth and under which support conditions. The CAP strategic plans, which were mentioned by Emmanuel, but also by Gunther before, should help indeed to assess this question, thanks to the indicators against which the plans should be trimmed. It is also important to underline, and this was also said before, but it's really striking that almost all farmland in the EU indeed could support locally adapted agroforestry solutions. The carbon farming study conducted the most recent roundtable in September, and there some key success elements for agroforestry for carbon farming were presented, including major enabling factors, but also discussing payment for robust results, and combining multiple sources of finance in order to make the switch to agroforestry systems possible on the ground. Key issues mentioned were the institutional capacities needed, but also the engagement of farmers to overcome significant barriers, and that specific on-site advice was needed, apart from cooperation and peer-to-peer learning. With regard to the monitoring, reporting, and validation systems, which need to be there in order to, make a credible payment program feasible, we are not starting from scratch. We have already valid evidence. However, for the moment, we are more confident on the information we have as regards carbon sequestration possibilities for above ground biomass than for the soil carbon pool. We have learned lessons from this study. We evaluated findings. It's important to involve people, all stakeholders who contribute to the endeavor. We concluded that agroforestry indeed is a long-term land use change and needs thorough preparation, and also the setup of programs is time-consuming. And indeed, we need to improve the monitoring, reporting, and validation system, notably working on improved understanding of what happens to the soil carbon pool. A quote of Jim McAdam, also I think no stranger to you. I think he was also featuring in the program of this conference. He made a statement at the second carbon farming roundtable in September here in the Commission, and he underlined indeed that agroforestry can provide even carbon neutral livestock systems in Europe. And his work indeed is based, his results, his statements are based on the outcome of 30 years replicated trial comparing different production systems. We also, at the roundtable, we saw serious science and our acknowledged European Environmental Knowledge Center, European Environmental Agency, commenting on our carbon farming guidelines, the draft guidelines, on the recommendations we came up with. I should mention that the carbon farming study started 2 years ago and will come to an end by the end of this year. And the roundtable in September indeed validated the draft final output. And we engaged the European Joint Partnership on Agricultural Soil Research, which is a consortium of more than 20 partners and more than 20, I think 23 or 25 EU member states. And it brings into this constellation together the agricultural soil research institutes, the national ones. So this high-level science agglomeration, I would say, we were able to, to bring also to the table and to comment. And in the end, I think the comments were very positive. So the potential of agroforestry was indeed confirmed. However, also the current deficiencies or areas of desirable improvement were clearly mentioned, and we did not leave it with this, but we were very grateful to also have commitment of the European Joint Partnership of Agricultural Soil Researchers to work on these gaps with regard to agroforestry also. So they indeed committed to develop over the coming years knowledge, more knowledge, science-backed knowledge on the carbon sequestration potential, building notably, now I have to quote, a hybrid articulated quantification system, which shall help us, to base our carbon farming programs in the EU on it. Also, the Environmental Agency joined this mission. We received a statement also from the EEA, and the EEA is running notably the Copernicus Pan-European component, and this should also very much help us in the future to achieve cost-efficient monitoring, reporting, verification solutions for carbon farming and agroforestry schemes. The Environmental Agency also invited us indeed to make the case, to come up with our specific needs, and indeed to use the recommendations from feasibility studies which were already conducted. And indeed, this is what we want to do. So we enter now smoothly into the next phase of carbon farming. We are going to pilot across the EU promising approaches in all carbon farming areas. So from regenerative agriculture, extending crop rotations, especially integrating legumes into the rotation, reduced tillage, longer crop rotations, cover crops, reduced synthetic inputs, also incorporating livestock grazing into systems wherever possible. Striving to move towards carbon neutral livestock systems, as it was also outlined by Jim McAdam, that it was feasible. We want to pilot agroforestry further, but also rewetting of peatland. We are moving on all fronts, let's say, and also we would test integrated approaches, as, for example, it was proposed to be conducted in Germany by the Farm Food Climate Challenge, but also in Cyprus. You see, we are also, covering the EU at large, the territory. In Cyprus, for example, the idea was developed based on the Life Organico project to translate the demand for sustainable food from school canteens into also agroforestry, but also regenerative agriculture solution on farms, to connect purchasers and food purchasers and farmers via digital platform, and rewarding then farmers via payment agencies under the CAP and carbon verification bodies, integrating them to reward farmers then for the climate benefits they generate thanks to their sustainable practices. I'm now at the conclusions of my brief intervention, conclusions on carbon farming and agroforestry. So I can safely say, I think that agroforestry has a key role to play in EU Green Deal delivery. And agroforestry indeed is supported by various policy instruments and diverse stakeholder engagement. The EU draft guidelines on how to set up agroforestry carbon farming programs have been developed and were presented at the second roundtable. I included here for your potential reference the link where you can see all presentations. There's a live streaming and also background material available. The European Joint Partnership on Agricultural Soil Research and also the EA positively validated the guidelines, and they provided recommendations for concrete and constructive follow-up, also engaging themselves. And I'm very, very grateful for this, to have them on board in order to, in the future, when we make the case, when we put the guidelines in practice, to have them on board to accompany us on this pathway when we pilot action and demonstrate solutions in the real farming context. Thank you very much.
Christina, thank you very much. Music to our ears. We agroforesters sometimes felt that we were like prophets in the wilderness. For years, decades even, we have been pointing out trees are good for the climate. You can add them to farmland, and it's wonderful to see that DG Climate is now beginning to recognize it. In particular, I notice this key sentence you made, that you recognize that agroforestry could be established in almost all farmlands across the EU, and we would wholeheartedly agree. And we also noticed the problem that we have with monitoring what the carbon impact of this is, but I would say let's not let that stop us. Yes, it might be important for the great accounting
Probably we have lost Patrick. Unfortunately, in the most important moment when he has to make the conclusion of the session.
I hope he will come back soon.
I hope so. So anyway,
we support him now. I think we can just wait.
We can just wait for a minute, some minutes. This is the unlucky moments due to irregular connections. Anyway, probably Patrick is trying to reconnect himself to the webinar.
If you
Unfortunately. Sorry, Christine.
Yourself or questions, maybe Gunther's there, I see. Together, maybe we are able to address any points if there are any at this stage.
There are some comments by Maria Rosa Mosquera Lozada in the chat.
Maria Rosa was also at the roundtable and made very valuable.
Okay, Patrick is in now.
I'm back. Seem to have had some connectivity. I don't know when I broke up.
No, you were just beginning your conclusions and try to give a summary of the session, maybe.
Okay.
Remember that there are some questions in the chat.
Yes. I've now lost because I've came back. Let's see if I can have them. Yes, I can see those questions. Now I have a question to you as the organizer. We're already running over time, but we're supposed to be taking a break anyway. Do we have time to deal with some of the questions we have in the chat?
I think yes. So because now it's about 10:30. The next session must begin at 11:15. And so we have 15 minutes, but we can begin probably 5 minutes later the next session. So we have five minutes more to discuss and to talk with the chatters.
Wonderful. Let's seize that opportunity. I would suggest that we take another 7 minutes or so to discuss this, because people do need a break, or their eyes go square from looking at the screen all the time. The key issue for us is the Commission seems to recognize that agroforestry is important, but it's only dipping its toe in the water. It's not jumped in the pool. And the reason I say that, of course, is because we're still talking about pilot projects. We're still talking about agroforestry being suggested in general terms rather than to have concrete support measures put in place. And the fact remains that today, far less than 1% of all the money spent on advisory services and research in the agricultural space in Europe is devoted to agroforestry, despite the fact that we know that it's a difficult step for many farmers to take. So I will first open it up to the questions I can see here in the chat box. Rosa has a long question to do. She has 3 doubts about Pillar 2. Rosa, if you are there, could I ask you to ask your question directly? And Rosa is, I'm not sure if this is possible. I'm asking the technical people, because Rosa is not a panelist in this session, but just an attendee. So perhaps it's not possible. So let me read that. Rosa Mosquera, who is the president of the Spanish Agroforestry Federation, has 3 doubts. First,
do you want me to talk?
Maria Rosa is in. Yeah.
Yes, okay, I'm here. Wonderful. Okay, it's just, well, we have to recognize the really good step that I think the Commission took in the last years is moving agroforestry within the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. I have 3 doubts. One is about, for the eco schemes, the indicator that is going to be taken into account for agroforestry is the amount of afforested land. And my question is, what about that agroforestry systems that are established in areas where trees are already there, and you include an agroforestry crop or livestock as an agricultural component? Are they excluded from the Pillar 1 because it's not part of this indicator, because the amount of afforested land would remain? The second question is, of course, there are 2 big measures that supports agroforestry in general. One is 8.2 and mostly the agri-environmental measure, which is more based on the specific ecosystem services that agroforestry can deliver. My question is agroforestry going to be measured specifically for member states as part of the agri-environmental measure? The third question is about the eligibility laws. If the current measure 8.2, whatever is in the next CAP, is implemented, this is a very important problem for the farmers to foster agroforestry. And finally, I just like the idea that Christina mentioned at the very end, saying that agroforestry is a kind of land use that has to be taken into account a long term. So my question is, what do you think? Does Europe need an agroforest strategy, as was mentioned in the Indefinite project and in the Forward project, to ensure that agroforestry is implemented, and therefore all the benefits from a carbon, biodiversity, nutrient cycling, etc. point of view is taken really seriously for all of us? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosa. I don't think we have Emmanuel here any longer, who would be best able to answer that question. But perhaps Günther or Christina?
Yes, well, if I may say a few words. You are right that on the very technical questions regarding the CAP, it would be better for DG Agri to reply. So as regards the indicators, well, there's an expert group on indicators, a dedicated expert group where we are not taking part. So this very technical question about the indicators could be addressed in that forum, because I think that they have a very complex questions regarding to every indicator discussed there, and this would be the right forum. But I think the fact that maybe agroforestry does not suit a specific indicator would not mean that it would not be eligible. So this is not linked to the eco schemes question. So I think that there can be eco schemes financing agroforestry, although there is although there's maybe some doubts about the associated indicator. So I think this is will not be a very big issue in practice, my knowledge. Then the question about the agri-environment measures, I'm not sure if I got it right. What I wanted to say is that the opportunities under Pillar 2, and we have some under Pillar 2, 30% earmarked for the environment. Currently ongoing discussions with Council and Parliament on that percentage. And this is where agroforestry would definitely fit into. And the current CAP, we have Measure 8 is on forestry, and there agroforestry would fit into naturally. And then we have Measure 10, agri-environment climate measures. So under this nomenclature, there would be room for agroforestry would be rather under Measure 8. And then new CAP, we don't have this nomenclature anymore, but we can expect that we will have a similar system, not necessarily with the same numbers and not necessarily with the same names, to make it easier to identify measures. But I wouldn't be too much concerned on how to label it, as long as member states have the will to include agroforestry under the measures to be financed under Pillar 2. They will certainly find a way to finance it. Normally, it would fit more under forestry than under agro-environment climate, but we are open to that. I don't think that there would be a problem. Where we would have a problem if agroforestry is not sufficiently supported in member states where we believe that this would really be very necessary. So I would be more relaxed about the labeling. And then the question about eligibility, I'm not sure I got it right, but it's probably what you refer is probably what can qualify as agroforestry to be financed under the CAP. And there we have definitions at national level on agricultural land, etc. So this would be more in the remit of the member states, if I understood the question correctly.
Thank you very much, Günther. Javier, at the beginning, I said that I would call back upon you to try to give us your view from the perspective of the work you've done on what you heard from our colleagues from the Commission. Can you please share your impressions?
Yes, very much. So I think that, and it actually links directly to the last comment on eligibility. I think that eligibility of land for CAP subsidies is one of the aspects where things can notably improve with this coming CAP. Partly, but it's not a straightforward result. This, as Günther was just mentioning, there's a lot of leeway also for member states to choose how to define exactly eligibility rules for land, but the framework is more generous. Let's say that member states that do really want to take into account a lot more woody elements, trees, and do not exclude them from CAP subsidies are definitely don't have any excuse on the EU anymore to do so. And in the past, that was a little bit what happened. There was a strong pressure from the European Commission to avoid ineligible features to be part of the. I mean, all this logic, strange logic of the CAP, whereby a farmer that has more trees would have less CAP subsidies, which is going clearly against the climate purpose. For me, if I would underline one thing that is really is an improvement is there, but for that improvement to materialize, this is not going to be written in the regulations so much. It will depend. The real good outcome will only depend if the Commission and the member states work well jointly to achieve that result. And I think there's still, and maybe it's something that wasn't sufficiently underlined today, there are not going to be strong obligations coming from the Commission in this coming CAP, and so we need to work both ways. We need to have member states really wanting to uptake agroforestry and to support agroforestry more, and we need to have a Commission that is also pushing member states to go in that direction. So I think that the Commission, with all the, as I said earlier in my presentation, with this political push that we have towards agroforestry, is in a good situation now, but they need to also continue the work over the coming 9 to 12 months and to ensure that the CAP strategic plans really do deliver what we want to deliver on agroforestry.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Javier. That's an absolutely crucial point. And here I would like to remind our colleagues from the Commission who encouraged us to go and talk to the member states that the agroforestry is a science without hardly any funding. The European Agroforestry Federation does not have any staff. We are all purely volunteers. The people who are our members in these different countries tend to be academics or farmers, not lobbyists. We are all volunteers. It is therefore crucially important, Javier, that the work that you've done to encourage the European landowners to join us is something that is replicated at the level of the member states in collaboration with the local agroforestry associations. Because what we find when we talk to the ministries is that we very rarely meet a brick wall. What we often meet are people who are ignorant of agroforestry's potential and want to learn. And that's really the opportunity that we need to get. So we hope that we can count on our friends in the Commission to keep on doing this, and indeed on our friends in the various other European organizations that are interested in the promotion of this fantastic land use. With that, I'm going to conclude this session. Everybody has deserved a break, and we now have only 5 minutes left before the start of the next session. Please unmute yourselves, open up your cameras, and join me in a round of applause to our three fantastic speakers. All right, are you all ready? And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I would like to thank you for the brilliant moderation of the debate as usual. So let's see all of you in about 5 minutes after a very brief break. for the fourth session of the webinar. See you later. Hello again, everybody. We are already ready to begin the fourth and last section of the webinar. The topic is always the same, the future of agroforestry policies. And the main part of the session will be occupied by a roundtable, which will be moderated by Rico Hübner. Rico is already Hello, Rico, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. So the fourth session of the webinar will begin in a few seconds. Just to say that the facilitator is Rico Hübner from the Faculty of Landscape Architecture and Landscape Planning of University of Munich, Germany. We will have some contribution coming from EURAF, coming from some universities and other institutions from Ministry of Agriculture of Italy. At the end, we will have a brief session summarizing the outcomes of the webinar and a closing of the meeting made by Justina Mezzalira. So let's start with the roundtable, and the mic is yours, Rico.
Yes, also from my side, a very warm welcome to this fourth session. As we heard from Antonella, it's a round table, and the round includes really very nice speakers. We have Jerry Lawson, we have Sarah and Ulrich from the universities. We have a representative from the Italian Farming Association and the European from Copa Cogeca. We have two presentations from the ministry in Italy, and I think this represents very well the various stakeholders that are involved in shaping the agroforestry history in Europe in the coming common agricultural period. Now, we will start with Honorable Jerry Lawson. I don't think I need to introduce him. He's been a founding member of EURAF back in December 2011. He's a trained forester, and he is, let's call him the super crack of agricultural policy. Jerry, the floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
Okay, Rico, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay. Put your thumbs up, Rico, if you can hear me fine. Right, good. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share the desktop. Should see that in 1 second. And also I need to turn my camera back on by doing that. Okay, that may or may not have worked. You may not be able to see me now, but I think you can still hear me. Okay, so my name's Jerry Lawson. I'm a research fellow in the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology in Edinburgh, but also I'm one of the UK delegates to the EURAF committee. I want to say a few words about EURAF first before talking about policies. We're gradually increasing the number of countries that we cover. We have organizations in those countries from May 1998 and added 4 more countries between then and now. So there are EURAF members active in every country who can advise on agroforestry in your structure plans. So we have contacts through a number of projects, through our local partners with farmers in each of those countries, and seek to maintain resources and videos of information relevant. We have active social media sites in Facebook, LinkedIn, and other mechanisms, and many thanks to the volunteers for looking after those. We produce regular articles and newsletters, and if you're not on the newsletter, you're encouraged just to subscribe to that. And on the website, you can find a number of the policy briefings that I'll be talking about later. So also we're seeking to provide a source of information on agroforestry sites and provide photographs of those, provide an ever-increasing resource that will see what is agroforestry in all its various forms. I'm very happy that Sarah and Ulrich will be joining us in a minute to talk about two big research projects related to agroforestry, but I think it's fair to say that forestry has not been represented in very many specific research projects from the European Union until recently. So looking for agroforestry as a keyword or mentioned anywhere within the description in Cordis, I could find only 29 projects, and 11 of those are partially in Europe. So going back to the SAFE project, which Christian Duprat led, which actually was the cause of the introduction or helped agroforestry to be introduced in the CAP of 2007 to 2013. There are a number of lean years going forwards, big gaps between 2009, 2014, for example, still big gaps before the recent round of projects rise. So these are the two really big projects with the budget of 7 million euros that we hear about very soon. Until then not a great deal, but very useful and very significant projects, particularly the AFINET project and the AgForward project. So we're looking forward to great things in these two new ones. I mentioned another couple of projects which are interesting. This one, Next Land, talks about agroforestry, but I should flag up that in some countries, some languages, agroforestry is taken to mean all possible combinations or all possible instances of forestry and agriculture, so do beware of the term. Okay, organize these conferences, helps to organize them, and this was a hugely successful conference last year in Montpellier with more than 1,200 delegates. We're also active in a number of the EU civil dialogue groups, and at most of those we seek to speak and put the case for agroforestry. We've also been looking at possible typologies and classifications of agroforestry. So this is a classification deriving from Rosa's work in the AgForward project and other published work where we're looking at the need to classify agroforestry in various ways. Is it agricultural land or is it forest land, first of all? Secondly, are the trees inside the parcels or on the edges of parcels? And this is a classification that really works for the CAP and specifically for the CAP because it's picked out those tree landscape features which have been identified as such and are therefore protected. So that's a rather different classification than one which you would need in the wider global context. But anyway, there are 8 of those on agricultural land, 8 of those types of agroforestry or agroforestry. So moving on quickly to our draft policy recommendations. The first is that within the IACs, within the annual reporting that farmers have to do, that there should be codes and recognition given for these agroforestry practices. It's basic. Every farmer understands the LPIS. They understand the need to provide codes. So that's our first, technical recommendation, but important. Secondly, number 2, within the LPIS, many member states are not using the satellite imagery in very high resolution that already exists to pre-identify landscape features, groups of lines of trees. The member states could do this comparatively easily now, and it would make farmers' jobs easier. So member states need to get moving on that, and they have to have that in place by 2023. Thirdly, we talked about billion extra trees. They're saying that most, if not all of those extra trees could go outside the forest as agroforestry, or urban trees. Fourthly, there needs to be very much clearer identification and clarity that if you have agroforestry with scattered trees and your agriculture continues, then you're still remain entitled to your direct payments. Fifthly, the Commission delegates talked about good agricultural and environmental practices. In all those national guidelines and manuals which are written to describe the which farmers follow, agroforestry has a place. So it's not only Guide 9, it's each one of those agricultural practices, for example, buffer strips. Yeah, there's no reason why you can't have trees and buffer strips. Fifthly, there's a problem in greening at the moment, that the only recognition for agroforestry in the greening rules is on arable land. There's no reason why agroforestry on permanent pasture, for example, cannot count towards your Guide 9. Okay, technical, but very important. Similarly, the current greening rule limits agroforestry only to agroforestry which has previously been funded in Pillar 2. That's a completely unnecessary restriction. And if you've got a management plan, we'll come to that later, then it should be eligible for counting towards your GAIAC threshold. Also, this is hugely technical, but there are, for landscape features, it's an amazingly complicated area, and the thresholds which an individual country uses can be various. They can have one rule for greening and one rule for cross-compliance. So farmers are hugely confused by that, and member states need to clarify that. Okay, got 6 Enrico, to go through these. So in Pillar 1, if you look at the more detailed recommendations, each of these blue numbers is clickable. So you'll find more information on those, but we've come up with 5 different eco schemes which could be included by member states, recognizing that you could have one year a planning eco scheme, 1 year followed by an implementation the next year. Okay. I've also, in recommendation 10, we're talking about ACA 8.2. So these are the old sub-measures within measure 8. The names will change, but you can still refer to them by the old names. So we need a continuation of sub-measure 8.2. We need forestry and forest protective infrastructure to be included in new member state plans, so similar to the current 8.3 and 8.4. Also, we need to consider agroforestry as an agri-environmental measure. Coming back to what was mentioned before by Emmanuel about result indicator 17, I think it's damaging to refer to agroforestry as a type of afforestation. It is not. So we would much prefer to see the title of that saying afforested and agroforested land. 2 more, result indicator 29, the agricultural ministers have removed that from the current draft. We think that's very damaging. And 15, again, a technical thing, but there are 3 countries which currently fund their forestry completely outside the cap, and therefore, according to the current rules, will not have to report. The result indicators will not be eligible to their nationally funded forestry schemes. Okay. Rico,
Jerry, yes, Jerry, your time is up. Can you summarize the last slide, please?
I will do. So I have only 2 more slides. This one shows that we've done a calculation for DG Klima showing that if you just take the high priority agroforestry areas, then all the 3 billion trees should go outside the forest. Yeah? And please come to the conference in Nuoro in May 2021, and we can continue this discussion on policy and catch up, particularly with what countries are doing in their strategic plans. Okay, that's it.
Harry, thank you very much. Again, a lot of information. I can really appreciate, highlight that everyone checks out those already 8 online policy documents. They're really a treasure. And I would like to press my big thanks for all the effort you put into your work at EURAF. Thank you very much. Our next presentation is actually from the research side. It's done by 3 people together. One is Sarah Burby. She is working in the UK. She's assistant professor and at Coventry University, and is dealing with social capital, change management, and action research. The second presentation within that block will be done by Ulrich Schmutz. I guess he is German, as it sounds a German name. And also at Coventry University at the Center of Agroecology, Water and Resilience. He will also talk about the current research project that have been mentioned by Jerry. And finally, in this blog, we have Professor Dalgaard. He is the section manager professor of the Department of Agroecology and Agricultural Systems and Sustainability, head of the research unit at Aarhus University in the Faculty of Agricultural Science. I think Sarah will start, then Ulrich will continue, and lastly, Tommy will finish. We have altogether 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rico. I'm sharing my screen now. Let me know if you can see it. Please raise your thumb.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Fantastic.
Yes, I can see it.
Fantastic. So I'm coordinator of AgroMix, one of the recent projects awarded by the European Commission. 2020 program, and AgroMix stands for Agroforestry Mixed Farming Systems, Participatory Research to drive the transition to resilient and efficient land use in Europe. So we pretty much link to what the European Commission colleagues spoke about this morning earlier, and I'll show you briefly how. I'm super to allow all my colleagues to present. So we're going to show you. This is us. This is AgroMix. This is 28 partners across the continent, 14 countries represented. As you can see, there's quite a good balance between academics and non-academics. And what we want to work on is participatory research to transition to efficient land use in Europe. So this is very much linked to what Emmanuel Patel was mentioning earlier this morning. So we want to have interaction between researchers and farmers, create living labs, provide practical solutions, like it's been mentioning earlier by our colleagues. We also want to explore new technologies and approaches to manage these complex systems, agroforestry and mixed farming. We just started literally 2 weeks ago, and we will end in 4 years. So bear with us, we just started. So our objectives are essentially to fill the gaps and connect the dots. What does it mean? There are lots of synergies within these systems, and they're not just environmental synergies. We need to provide, to foster transition, we need to provide support also from a socioeconomic point of view. So this is essentially what we are aiming at, joining the dots, what we know, what we don't know, try to fill the gaps, and provide support for the transition with some tools or toolkit to support farmers. And in this we'll also work together with policymakers to develop action plan and policy recommendations, like my colleague Ulrich will mention to you. So our approach is basically to work to get in a lot of participatory activities, also within the work packages, not just with farmers outside. So we will provide guidelines for different types of practitioners. We have field sites across Europe. We have some modeling about climate and socioeconomic scenarios, and we will create 12 knowledge hubs across Europe. These are 12 co-design pilots to earlier this morning, but living labs. So in these pilots, participants will essentially think about how to redesign the systems to transition to agroforestry, to introduce agroforestry, how they can make it work, what is needed, what they need to work on with researchers, what kind of supports they need from them. And I pass on to my colleague Ulrich, who is leading the work package on policy. I'll keep sharing my screen, so if Ulrich can just turn on his audio.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, thank you, and thank you, Rico, for the introduction. It's true. I'm born in Bavaria, Germany, but the name is Swiss, so nearly enough. So we are talking about policy co-development here in this work package, which we are co-lead with Paola, and you can see here she's the president of Agroecology Europe, and that's also, we think that the co-development together with the agenda on agroecology is important. So that's a deliberate choice. The next one. So if you see the rationale, I mean, thank you anyway for this interesting thing, because today and yesterday it has already brought it together, so I don't really need to say too much. So we have this 25% certified organic land use, and we have also the biodiversity strategy combined, and a lot of my background in research has been on organic regulation, and which I call the good agricultural practice, which was based in 1991. But it's coming in, but it's also watered down in Parliament and the political process. So you know, this is where we are now, and what's happening, and we heard it already earlier from Gary and others, how we are connected to that. In the German word, we have this word Agrarwende, which it means actually quite a revolutionary change, a transition to agroecology in Europe. And I would want to mention another project which we actually start, which is called Agroecology for Europe, where Rosa, which is also very much in this, is leading the policy work. So I see quite a lot of synergies here. So what we are looking is potentially, and agromix is not only agroforestry, it is agroforestry and mixed farming, potentially looking into the real change, a major change in the land use in Europe, which mainly requires the opposite of what mixed farming and agroforestry is, mainly intensive industrial livestock production, which wouldn't be available or allowed if the organic standard of this, what I said earlier, the GAP, the Good Agricultural Practice of 1991, would become the minimum standard for all livestock production. So that obviously has to go through Parliament. That is a long discussion, and the research will basically give some evidence to that. What are the options? And if you go to the next one, so what we are actually doing is we have 4 tasks. We will do an inventory of current policy context. A lot of it is already available. And we do some in-depth analysis of policy scenarios. The project is 4 years. And then we have 10 multi-stakeholder policy workshops in different EU countries and national states. And then we will have some EU policy level development where I'm very sure we can link in a lot of the work which is ongoing here and also next year in Sicily. And the final one, because of time, so we will use a nested approach. So we are interested on the EU level in terms of the policy making, but also, I said my name Swiss, non-EU states. So we will look at Switzerland, they are partners. Also the UK in that case is interesting. What is the UK doing now being outside of the EU? You know, is there anything potentially better or worse with the environmental land management plan here? We also look at 2 federal states within Germany, one is in East Germany and one in the very west of Germany, and then also look at the level in Eastern Europe with some specific policy work, because there we think the conditions are different. And then there will be some EU level as well. And I think that's it for me in terms of time. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I would like to ask Professor Delga to share his screen.
Yes. I now push share. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Should I start? That's good. I'm Tommy Dalgaard. I'm a professor at the Department of Agroecology, Aarhus University. And therefore, of course, I'm very happy to hear also from you, Ulrik, and the other project that you also have a big emphasis on agroecology and extending this also to agroecology and agroforestry, because that's actually a very high emphasis and high aim also of our project and also from our institute. And well, I saw in your slides, Gary, that Denmark was one of the countries that was not highlighted in EURAF, and I'm, of course, important, but for sure we are wanting to drive this agenda, both in research but also in reality together with the CAP. And this is also part of the programming for our government as well as many other governments now, how to integrate this into the CAP. And we are very happy that we can contribute this with this major project here for the next 4 years and looking into both efficiency of the systems but also resiliency, and agroforestry can really contribute to that. And now I am trying to shift my slides. Here it is. And therefore, we have these many partners here, also from some of the countries where we have a very strong tradition in agroforestry, that we can then develop this further in these countries like Denmark, where we don't have a strong tradition, and then do this in this agroecological context. But also, like you do in AgroMix, very much with farmers, bottom-up networks of farmers that has already agroforestry, has practice to share in different combinations, different countries, so we can make clusters across Europe. This is just to say this, some of the work packages, some of the faces, because we are a large consortium. You saw all the names, and we have project leaders coming in from previous experiences in Ag Forward and other projects. So we think we have a really, really strong consortium to contribute, and also we have a complementarity with the AgroMix, both in form of competences, but also with countries emphasized. So the very close collaboration between the two projects leading towards this CAP is very much. I think also we have a very strong focus on also linking it to some of the experiences of the organic farming community, because we are co-leaded by the International Center of Organic Farming Research here in Denmark. That's an international center. But the core for the work packages is this, the MIFAS networks. So we call it, MIFAS is a concept we would like to be popular now, because it's mixed farming and agroforestry systems, and it's and so all the work packages around the MIFAS systems, and these MIFAS systems is demonstrated in networks. We also have experiments that can be programmed and tested to make these networks, and this is just showing the countries that we operate in, and there is a good complementarity and also mixed with the projects that was just presented. And then there is these different themes, as you say, Ulrik. It's not only agroforestry, but it's a very high emphasis on agroforestry and driving the agenda towards integration of agroforestry. I agree very much. This is not afforestation. This is agroafforestation, or what you call it. And very much combination of different types of value chains, where you can have value created both in form of products and other qualities than just amounts, environmental and climate products, but also at a landscape level. Integration with livestock production, this is a very high emphasis in Denmark, and demonstrating this in real farms. And this is actually my last slide, because we had a very successful introduction meeting last few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. We should have been in Portugal in the Montado under the oaks and with nice settings, but then we have moved to Zoom, but it was very successful. We had presented all these emerging networks around Europe that can have many different combinations that can be used in this further development of agroforestry, and also integration in the CAP with all these new possibilities we have. We already started up with a homepage here that you can log in, and we are here as a project for the next 4 years, and I look very much forward to that. I think that was my words.
Tommy, thank you very much for this nice overview over this huge project with a big consortium. It's always the case with these EU projects that the number of partners are hard to fit on one PowerPoint slide, but that's how it is. Okay, now we will continue with a representative of the farmers. He's a representative of Confagricoltura, Massimiliano Ciansanti. He's from Rome. Of course, he's a farmer himself. He has been successful in a number of businesses, producing cereals, milk products, etc., etc. He's also involved in Copa Cogeca, which is the Brussels-based farmers association. And I would like to welcome you, Massimiliano, and the floor is yours. Unmute your mic.
Hello to everybody. Do you hear me? Hello, I'm Massimiliano Giansanti. I'm a farmer. I'm the president of Confagricoltura, the big and the most important association of farmers here in Italy, and also I'm vice president of COPA. So now I'm going to speak in my languages for my suggestion to your very important meetings of today. Grazie, io sono un allevatore, quindi capisco molto bene qual è il valore e quello che può rappresentare in generale per i temi che state toccando, i temi ovviamente dell'architettura verde e qual è anche il valore ovviamente che gli agricoltori possono portare nel mantenimento della biodiversità e nel mantenimento dell'ambiente. Noi nelle nostre aziende agricole, io anche in particolare, sviluppiamo molto l'attività del pascolo, che è un'attività fondamentale per il corretto e la giusta manutenzione ovviamente delle attività boschive. In effetti l'agroforestazione è una pratica antica molto agricola ed è in costante evoluzione nel tempo. È tornata tra l'altro molto con forza anche nel dibattito politico e molti politici oggi la interpretano anche come con una nuova visione e soprattutto con una nuova capacità di portare innovazione per poter risolvere i molti problemi che affliggono il clima, l'ambiente e soprattutto quelli che sono i dannosi effetti dei cambiamenti climatici. L'agroforestazione può portare quindi dei benefici sia agli agricoltori che alla collettività. Benefici ovviamente di carattere economico, sia per la sua capacità di diversificare i prodotti, di ridurre i costi e aumentare la produttività, ma anche e soprattutto sul profilo ambientale, per l'adattamento e la mitigazione degli effetti appunto del cambiamento climatico di cui parlavo poco fa, per proteggere il suolo, la biodiversità e in generale il paesaggio. Ma per poter ottenere tutti questi benefici deve essere adottata alle condizioni locali e tener conto della diversità dell'agricoltura all'interno dei singoli paesi che vanno a comporre l'Unione Europea. Anche per il COPA, che è l'Associazione degli Agricoltori Europei, è un tema estremamente rilevante. Io sono vicepresidente del COPA, porto il saluto della Presidente Christina Muller, ed è uno dei temi più importanti che vengono affrontati tutte le volte che si riuniscono i board del COPA Cogeca, i temi della forestazione e dello sviluppo soprattutto alla luce del Green Deal. È evidente che i benefici dell'agroforestazione sono molto chiari nel lungo periodo, ma dobbiamo lavorare molto nella transizione in breve termine per dare sempre di più la possibilità di specializzare un settore fondamentale che è quello della coltivazione dell'allevamento verso sistemi agroforestali economicamente redditizi, pronti anche per vincere le sfide dei mercati globali. L'agroforestazione
Agroforestry is currently recognized at the EU level as one of the tools that could contribute to improve the sustainability of the farming sector, and it is supported by the EU CAP. Notwithstanding this, not all member states have included it in the strategic plans, and we need to strengthen the role of agroforestry in general terms in building the future CAP. The definition of the new CAP goes into this direction. This is a very relevant topic, as well as the cross-compliance topic. So increasing the number of plants in arable land is a great opportunity
opportunity for us all.
Quindi nel mio breve intervento di oggi vorrei porre poi l'attenzione su alcuni argomenti per noi fondamentali, che sono in particolar modo l'importanza e la conoscenza della diffusione delle informazioni nella formazione dei servizi di consulenza. I temi della consulenza sono temi fondamentali e rilevanti nello sviluppo dell'agroforestazione. Quindi sono assolutamente essenziali i temi della ricerca applicata all'agroforestazione, della consulenza appunto, e soprattutto di un nuovo sistema agricolo che possa mettere al centro dello sviluppo di un programma agricolo anche il tema ovviamente della migliore e della maggior forza della sostenibilità legata ovviamente alle piante nelle nostre aziende agricole. Pertanto lo scambio di conoscenze su base comune deve diventare un momento di arricchimento generale per tutti noi. Altro elemento è il riconoscimento di ciò che gli agricoltori fanno per la foresta e lo sviluppo delle foreste. È evidente che sempre di più oggi noi agricoltori abbiamo la necessità di dimostrare ai consumatori, ma in generale all'opinione politica e soprattutto a livello generale quello che è il nostro ruolo in termini di mantenimento delle foreste. Pensate che solamente in Italia il 50% della nostra superficie nazionale è coperto da foreste, l'altro 50% è superficie agricola, e quindi è evidente che dovremo sempre più e sempre meglio gestire un elemento fondamentale nello sviluppo e nel progresso della nostra civiltà, che è appunto l'utilizzo delle foreste. Altro tema molto importante sarà il tema del sequestro del carbonio, su cui ovviamente molto stiamo facendo. Oggi a livello europeo solamente in pochi stati viene riconosciuto il ruolo per quello che è la capacità di sequestrare carbonio nell'atmosfera, e credo che questo sia uno dei grandi temi su cui dovremmo rilanciare l'azione di sviluppo dell'agroforestazione per portare anche un contributo economico a tutti quegli imprenditori che già oggi operano mantenendo sistemi agroforestali e silvicoltura importanti, e per dare anche nuove possibilità di investimento a tutti coloro i quali vorranno portare un nuovo contributo. Su questo è importante anche il contributo che potranno avere le grandi companies che ci sono a livello mondiale, che potranno acquistare crediti carbonio per mostrare ovviamente il loro livello di sostenibilità anche in funzione di obiettivi che raggiungeranno grazie appunto alle attività degli agricoltori. Chiudo con un tema estremamente importante, che è il ruolo ovviamente dei PEI, dei partenariati europei per l'innovazione, e sempre di più, come dicevo prima, sarà fondamentale l'attività di ricerca e lo sviluppo di progetti europei per poter sempre di più promuovere progetti in ambito non più nel singolo Stato membro, ma progetti che possono essere internazionali, quindi per gruppi omogenei di paesi, se pensiamo alle aree delle Alpi, alle aree ovviamente di altri complessi montani che ci sono in Europa, oppure per singole zone di omogenee, che su questo ovviamente andrebbero a rafforzare una visione nuova europea degli agricoltori, del contributo degli agricoltori per quello che può essere ovviamente la tutela, il mantenimento e il rafforzamento delle misure agroforestali. Chiudo con un'ultima battuta. Voi sapete che nella futura politica agricola comunitaria molto dipenderà da quelli che saranno i modelli economici nazionali che dovranno essere adottati da ogni singola nazione. Su questo l'invito ovviamente è quello che ogni singolo Stato membro possa mettere al centro delle sue attività certamente il ruolo dell'agricoltura e dello sviluppo dell'agricoltura quale momento produttivo di beni primari, ma anche quale elemento essenziale nella capacità di mantenimento dell'ambiente e soprattutto di quelle che sono le sfide del Green Deal, e su questo sarà fondamentale quindi anche dare un ruolo importante alla forestazione e alla silvicoltura. Grazie.
Thank you very much.
Massimiliano, thank you very much. This was a very fast talk. Very thankful to the translators. I hope she could keep up with you. Thanks again. We are running a little bit late, but we've been doing that for the entire session, so I think we are more or less in time. We will have the opportunity at the very end of this roundtable to formulate questions. Now I would like to give the floor to Antonio Rattarelli from the Ministry of Agricultural, Food, and Forestry Policies. He in the ministry deals with the cross-compliance and agri-climate environmental schemes in the rural development measures. and he works together with Luigi Paris and on also topics like agroforestry. And he's also trying to bring that into perspective now with his talk for the measures in 2021 and 22. Please, Antonio, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I would like to thank all of you for such nice and interesting contributions. I learned a lot from what I heard. And moreover, I would like to thank webinar organizers for inviting us. And I would like to give the greet of the General Director of the Rural Development Department, Dr. Gatto, who gave me this task to deal with you in this such nice webinar. As you said, I work for the Italian Ministry of Agriculture within the Rural Development Department, dealing with what you said. I would say all the agro-environmental features of CAP. We are quite a complex organization in the ministry, and the office which I work for is dealing with all the agro-environmental feature of the CAP. I would like to try to share my some slides. Sorry, I'm trying to share the screen. Maybe I will be successful. Could you see my sharing screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Please make it full screen. Thank you.
Yes, I will try. Okay. Is it working?
Thank you. Yes.
Welcome. Just a moment. Yeah, I would like, sorry, just for my facility, I have to go back to the not full screen. I apologize, sorry. As I've already heard from the expert of this roundtable, agroforestry has for us, I would say, a wider meaning, which overcomes what is defined strictly agroforestry in rural development programs. Just to give an hint of our understanding, we do believe that mixed cultures can give a lot of advantages to ordinary farming in terms of hampering damages from harmful insects. This is just an example. Therefore, I would like to give just some hints about what has been realized in Italy over current programming period. You got here just some data about what has been done in Italy in the measures 8, which stems from the Article 21 of Regulation 1305. So it's what we call, sorry for going back, what we call this measure 8 is about investment in forest area development improvement of the viability of forests, and includes the 8.1, which is the support for afforestation, creation of woodland, support for establishment and the maintenance of agroforestry systems, 8.2, support for prevention of damage to forests from forest fires and natural disaster and catastrophic events, 8.3, and all the other sub-measures. I don't want to bother you, but you know well about that. Therefore, going back to the data, you can see that in our country, about the measure number 8, we had something like 0.62 billions of programmed financial resource coming from the Rural Development Fund, which means in terms of public expenditure, something like 1.2 billions of euros. And at the end of the day, we spent something like 1/3 of what was programmed. Still, we have, I would say, 2 more years, because the programming period is going to be extended also to 2021 and 2022 due to a number of reasons. These reasons include also the pandemic, but it is not only due to pandemic, as you know. Sardinia in particular has programmed something like 19 millions of euros, and still in terms of public expenditure is just something, the double is 41 billions of public expenditure. This is quite, you should consider that Italy has something like, over this programming period, has something like 18 billions of euros under all the rural development programs that in Italy are something like 23, because we have 21 regional rural development programs.
Antonio, you have 1 more minute, please.
Yes. What happened? Is there something wrong?
No, you have 1 minute, Antonio.
Okay, I'm going to finish. Yeah. Okay. And looking at strictly at the agroforestry sub-measures, we can see that in Italy, from the Rural Development Fund, there was something like 4.9, almost 5 millions of euros, which were programmed in terms of public expenditure, is something like 9 millions of euros. And we have a full amount of something like 13 million of euros, which is a little share of the of what was programmed in the rural development program under the measure number 8. Okay, due to the time I am running out of time, so I would finish here, but I'm available for question about the future, about about the next programming period. Thank you for your attention. Bye.
Thank you very much, Antonio. You must be an economist with all these numbers. It was really hard to see on the screen in the tables because the numbers were so small. And I also saw the numbers for agroforestry compared to all the other measures even smaller. But let's hope that in the future we will have bigger numbers on the screen and in the tables. Now, I would like to ask Alessandra Stefani, also from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Forest Policies in Italy. Please continue with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the floor. And I try to explain forestry and agroforestry, what the reason among them. Agroforestry, as a topic, is of strategic relevance in Italy, both concerning its outtakes on national economics evolving toward authentic green solution and for its contribution in the struggle against climate change. In countries where 40% of the territory is covered by forests, having overcome the cultivated hectares, along with urban and semi-urban reforestation interventions, agroforestry can be a valid alternative combining climate change mitigation, sustainable production, and reduction of the demand of wood products and timber coming from forests to be destined to long-term use and bioenergy. I don't believe it's a coincidence that in the first draft of the European recommendation for Italy's CAP strategic plan, there is the acknowledgement of how agriculture emissions in Italy have not decreasing during the past 7 years, and more effort to reduce them will be needed to contribute to EU target. The recommendation states that improving climate change adaptation is a transversal priority. Among these recommendations, it's very likely that there will be fostering climate change adaptation and resilience by incentivizing sustainable management of agriculture and forestry land through the definition of requirements and schemes promoting agroforestry. According to the data published by the first report of Italian forests, published in 2019, the surface dedicated to specialized poplar stands dedicated to the industry of plywood and semi-finished wood is estimated to by a little above 46,000 hectares, mostly clustered in the Lombard Venetian plain. After years in which this number shrunk, a good number of new implants were registered. We might be allowed to think to a new expansion cycle, even though, as right now, the offer doesn't reach the half of the demand. We are forced to depend on foreign importation of worse quality compared on national one. Great perspective is shown by MSA clones, poplar showing little demands of water and chemical products, adapt to be planted in delicate areas under the environmental point of view. Perfect results are shown by alley cropping along country roads, streams, and canal shores. Positive results are also shown by on-fields attempts with artifacts of poplar treated to withstand the elements and usable for outdoors. The rough reports the repartition data as well. The MSA clones are representing more or less the 17% of the implants, but this data is destined to grow. In October of this year, Italy should have hosted the International Poplar Congress along with a trip in the northeast region of Italy to spread the word about MSA poplar stands and Italian way of cultivation. We hope that the event will take place in 2021. Another important data emerging from RAF concerned the trees outside forests. It talks about all these groups of trees that aren't big enough to be considered forests. Between 1990 and 2013, the TOF increased in number of 17% and surface of 24%. Besides the afforestation benefits, these formations are a great opportunity. They improve the monotony of the rural landscape in Po Valley without impairing farming activities. Cutting these trees once they are ready contributes to decrease firewood demand coming from abroad. Finally, they might help to contain gas emissions coming from breeding and zootechnical farming. This will be part of the so-called nature-based solutions dedicated to another great phenomenon able to help reaching the challenging goals concerning climate change imposed to our country. Cork oaks forests in Italy cover a surface of 1,086,344 hectares, clustered in 6 regions, but in Sardinia alone, hosting the 83% of shade trees. The incredible project under the scope of Horizon 2020 aims at building a two-way channel to connect science and practice in production, transformation, and commerce of forestry and non-wooden materials in Mediterranean. In this project, Cork is an extremely important chapter. Technicians or experts are developing innovative networks. From what concerns cork, it has been pointed out that is a material that has its origin in a multifunctional ecosystem that provides many products and services, but environmental and social changes are now threatening cork oak forests. To mitigate these threats, it's necessary to address incoming challenges through innovation, knowledge, but also improve the profitability to sustainable management. Short rotation copies is copies grown as energy crop. Species are selected for the acceptance of varying climate and soil conditions, relative unsusceptibility to pest and disease, ease of propagation, and speed of vegetative food. Recently, some interesting studies were conducted investigating the possibility to create multi-cycle crops with different species and different growing rates, allowing the existence of the plantation and the scalability of production. Article 5 of Decree number 34 published in 2018 excludes short rotation copies from the legal definitions of forest. To conclude, agroforestry intended as the combination of agricultural system, seeing farming of tree species and shrub species, along with agriculture and grazing, underwent in Italy a drastic reduction since the 60s, starting for mechanization and crop specialization. Since 1992, the practice was acknowledged as an agricultural sustainable practice under the scope of Agenda 2021 held by the United Nations. European projects and the 2 CAP cycles proposed support to agroforestry, but this measure was not effective and was poorly used. Yet, it offers higher total production compared to monoculture. It allows a diversification of agricultural production. It allows to reduce fertilizer and pesticides with environmental and economic benefits. It improves soil fertility, water, and landscape quality. It helps improving biodiversity. It reduced the demand of firewood from forests and imported from abroad. It helps the struggle against climate change. The Ministry is following this topic very closely, addressing it not only as an autonomous issue in the next forestry strategy, but also introducing it in the proposed National Plan for Forestry Intervention to be implemented with the next Rural Development Programme period. Plan that will be written together with the region and which will certainly find technical support in the scientific committee of this event. Thank you very much.
Sandra, thank you very much also for sticking to the time. Now, I think we have a little opportunity for 2 to 3 very urgent questions before Alberto, Antonio, and Donatella will continue with the program. Please, anyone has a question for the panelists from the roundtable? Maybe raise your hand and then I can call you. Okay. I don't see any question. I will check the question and answer box. Also here, I don't see any. Patrick Worms has a question. Please, Patrick.
Yeah, it's a question to the representatives of the ministries of agriculture here. One of the issues that we face with complex farming systems, mixed farming systems, is that they produce more than one product, which is obvious enough. But that makes it more difficult for buyers to actually deal with those farmers, because to buy the amount of product that you need to feed your particular factory, you need to either interact with more farmers or you need to deal with having to buy products of higher heterogeneity. Is there a way that we public authorities can level the playing field so that it is as attractive for traders and value chain actors to purchase products from mixed farming systems as it is for them to purchase from monocropping farming systems? Thank you.
Patrick, thank you very much.
I don't know whether Dottoressa Stephanie is going to answer.
Yes.
Okay, I will try to answer to this question from my experience, because still I don't deal within the ministry with this exactly with this matter, with this stuff. But what I can see from the Italian, what I can get from the Italian outlook is that the farmers who choose to produce more than one, to run mixed cultures, they in particular deal with the local markets. So they usually choose to sell their products directly in the markets with the chain, how do you say, the short chain, and a lot of times there are people who sell directly, not by any buyers. So they go to the local markets and they can sell. So it's another kind of, and as far as I know, the short chain is we are trying to improve the short chain, because it is useful under a lot of point of views. Last but not least, the point of view of the greenhouse gases pollution. So you can avoid, you can prevent the pollution from GHG gases, but this is not so. As far as I know, the public part is trying to improve this situation, but we are dealing with two different markets. So it's not the usual markets of the big commodities. I think this is very clear to all of us. Thank you very much.
Antonio, thank you. There's a question by Jerry in the chat box. Not everyone has the chat box open, so I will read out. And directed to the Italian colleagues, about popular agroforestry as a traditional and widespread land use in the Po Valley. Do you see it coming back in a big way anytime soon?
I may carry on this subject. I don't know. Dottoressa Stefani, would you like to contribute?
Yes, I try, but my English is not so good, and I try to explain that in these 5 years, late years, we have an augmentation of land dedicated to poplar. Instead, in the 15 years before, we had a diminution, and we have a lot of poplars cutted but not replanted, owing to the concurrency, I think, of other products in the same land more profitable. So this condition, due to the too poor payment for unit of poplar produced, can be changed in the next 10 years, but now we have a lack of production due to these policies before, and we needed 10 years about to reach the quantity of poplar produced in Italy that we need for our industries. I hope to have been clear in my exposition. I hope it was comprehensible. Okay.
There's more in the chat box.
Can I add just an item?
No, Antonio, unfortunately, we run a little bit short on time. We have to continue now. I'm sure if Jerry has more questions about this issue, he can for sure contact you directly. I would like to now hand over the floor to Alberto, Antonio, and Donatella, which give us a roundup of the session. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Hope yes. Okay. So, Alberto, can you? You're already sharing the presentation with few slides where myself with Donatella Alberto, we will try to summarize and give some impression of the potentials for the limitations from this first few days of the policy event. So I will try to I consolidated some of the impression collected from the first day and or what could be like the potential condition and situation for agroforestry results in the EU. It's important to notice that we have some reporting for the implementation, the successful implementation of agroforestry measures and also refer to 2018, unfortunately, because of the latest could not be available given the health problem linked to COVID. But what we've seen already from 2018 and from previous years is that agroforestry measures were not so successful to create large-scale measures to follow up on the initial expectation and targets. This was especially true for agroforestry measures, but also for afforestation measures. So there is a clear problem of linked to some obstacles in the systems. In particular, for agroforestry, there are some initial obstacles linked to eligibility of agroforestry parcels for direct payments. There is an inherent complexity of agroforestry systems. And so I have to understand that it's clear that this administrative complexity gives also space for some confusions between different policy actors. So there are some possible also arising problem with the limitation imposed by the rulers and not being coherent. And this was also highlighted by Giustino. There is also another problem, which is these measures are part of forestry measures. So as this have been forestry measure, this might be limiting more proper what are the agroforestry management practices. So there might be no specific to follow up the true nature of agroforestry in these full potentials. Another issue is linked to, as we are speaking about trees, so we have to follow also like the period for which trees follow their services. Those periods have been not always coherently following up a certain period. It could be 10 years, but in some cases they've been also spanned for a longer period. So there is an issue here, obviously linked to having to give insurance over a large period, and this insurance can be not always so easy to make. And obviously we are facing different risk of different types, and it's interesting, like, and unfortunate to see like all the situation, for instance, for Greece, like we can have other important relevant issues for forest fire, so they gain all the attention, and all this attention is taken away from other more specific issues like agroforestry. So there can be also conflict of attention, which just not only take away resources, but also occupational staff attention to take their time into follow up all the agroforestry practices. There might be also, and this was easy to see, like, how do I take this off now? But so there is, it's not, go back, sorry, Alberto. There is also an easing of this potential complexity by giving lower obligation, for instance, in the structure, the number of trees. So as you make these rules less complex and more flexible, so you can have less obstacles for practitioners. So this is obviously have to be linked to a gateway of with general rules, technical rules that limit implementation. It's also true, and we have seen that very often the inclusion of trees has been linked, especially for timber production, but we can see that trees can have multi-function. So it's also interesting to see the case for Flanders, where we're mentioning the potential of food forest, but this could be also linked to what was emerged for Spain in case of chestnut production for animal consumption, for instance. So there could be a more flexible polyfunctionality of trees can be made to serve more more positive feedbacks in the system, in agroforestry system. Alberto, you can go to the next. So from the other side, there is also important lack sometimes on knowledge and scientific evidence, and especially to economic values. This relates also to the rural world that needs to feel safe, and on how agroforestry measures can be positive to their needs, especially to their economic needs. And they might not interfere with agricultural activities. So we heard this term of fear of trees in the field, and especially we have to make sure that this agroforestry measure don't interfere eventually, because there's a risk of interference from other funds can be received from CAP. We've seen, for instance, that to make more effective this measure, there was a need to increase unit cost. That was in Hungary, to make it more economical valuable. And but this is aside from this technical rules for eligibility. There is also real evident needs for knowledge that the system, the agroforestry system in its complexity might work. And it's important to have a local knowledge and local research shared between farmers and practitioners. So it's important in this sense to have a better communication of opportunity to help adaptation of agroforest incentives. In this case, for instance, we can see like the example of Apulia region that made a really strong case on transforming and sharing, for instance, to make it more successful. What is important anyway, that all these rules have to be flexible and to be as possible local. in order to facilitate agroforestry measure, because agroforestry itself has a very dynamic complexity, which can be very local. And in this sense, for instance, it's important because the ESA had a very important complexity, was shown from our colleagues from Andalusia. And this it was very important to really keep up all the important multifunctional and economic viabilities. So in this sense, it's important to understand that agroforestry incentives have to find a more specialized policies process in line with challenges shown by stakeholders. So it's really important. There was a recommendation by Rosa at the end, which I really think was really relevant, was that we have to make a strategic plan for demonstrators that really can show benefits, the effectiveness of certain measures on certain integrations between different agroforestry components, and make a networking showing exactly this success story, these best practices for between actors, region and country, and have a possibility to integrate these success stories into the forthcoming CAP, and not also ignoring other economic evaluations which are really becoming emerging as more and more important, as bioeconomy, organic farming, etc., etc. Thanks a lot for attention. I'll pass the expression second day to Donatella.
All right, thank you very much, Antonio, for the nice and detailed summary of yesterday, of what has been discussed yesterday. I'm Donatella Gaspar, and I'm speaking right now from the Netherlands, although I'm Italian. I'm gonna recap very briefly what has been talked about today, and I structured my recap around 3 words that really caught my attention this morning, and these are complementarity, interaction, and dialogue. Of course, I left out a lot of all the interesting things that have been discussed this morning, but I would like to focus a little bit around 3 very important concepts that emerged. Complementarity of what? Complementarity, first of all, between agriculture and the environment. As Patrick said early this morning, we have to bridge the divide, and agroforestry is the perfect opportunity to do so, also and especially at the policy level, as we saw so far. Complementarity also is needed between Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, as it's also planned to happen. And we've talked a lot about the enhanced conditionalities, the eco schemes, and also the agro-environmental measures in Pillar 2, which show a lot of room for agroforestry to be implemented and supported. EURAF, in one of the policy briefs, proposed actually 5 eco schemes, specifically supporting agroforestry that we saw this morning. And in all of the discussions, eligibility, as also Antonio has mentioned already, is key, and agroforestry always needs to be eligible for direct payments in any case. Complementarity also with short-term and long-term support. As we heard from Javier earlier this morning, we not only need to plant trees, but we actually have to grow them. So we need long-term support that would also complement for the lack of short-term returns that we have in general with planting trees in agroforestry systems. Going to the next word, interaction. We've seen with Europe-wide projects such as AgroMix the importance of partnerships, not only between and among several different research institutions, but also and especially with farmers, with practice. So bridging researchers and farmers, with also living labs, demonstration sites, and all of these, of course, need supports. And this is something key to get agroforestry out there and explain how it actually works and how important it is to get it going as soon as possible. And indeed, as I already mentioned, different stakeholders, so not only research and practice, but all the other actors that are involved in the food system and in the supply chain. Last but not least, dialogue. What emerged a lot today is the very important role the member states will have in the CAP post-2020. A lot will be defined in the CAP with the conditionalities and so on, but member states have a big role and a lot of responsibility in designing their strategic plans. That's why dialogue is very much needed and welcome between the European Commission and the member states to make sure that agroforestry is included in the strategic plans. We also need very much, as was mentioned by the farmer that we had today, knowledge. We not only need the money to plant the trees and to maintain them, but we have to know how to actually maintain these trees, how to take care of an agroforestry system. And there's a general lack of even agroforestry in higher education. So agriculture education needs to be updated, including agroforestry programs, and there's an urgent need as well of advice, knowledge transfer systems, and consultancy to update themselves and to include agroforestry in what's proposed. I would like to conclude and to pass the word to Alberto with just an open question and also suggestion maybe to the European Commission members who were present here today and to the rest. Besides only agroforestry, is the future CAP being ambitious enough? The Green Deal set very ambitious targets that are very important to be met in order to address the very urgent crisis that we're in. So I wonder, is the current EAP addressing that enough? The question is open for you to think about, and Alberto, please take over the mic.
Thanks, Donatella. I'm Alberto Montino. I'm a researcher in Pisa, here in Italy. And the goal of my presentation is to conclude our impression about our workshop. And to do this, we do a real-time analysis. And I want to show you our SWOT analysis of agroforestry and the new policy of the European Commission. We know that agroforestry has a lot of strengths, a lot of positive aspects. It was very amazing to see the huge amount of type of agroforestry along Europe. We know that agroforestry means not only tradition, means only also innovation. So we know also that agroforestry systems are able to increase agroecosystem services, so are able to increase sustainability and resilience of the agricultural production. But on the other hand, we know also there are negative aspects, and these workshops were very useful to assess these negative aspects. The eligibility and exploitation CAP and rural development plan measure, it is not easy. It is not easy in the past, in particular. And farmers are partly reluctant and not very interested in that measure and that practices that are not really clarified in the CAP. So we assess also there is a lack of supply chain able to increase the profitability of agroforestry system, as also reported and make a question about it our president Patrick before me. But there are also a lot of opportunities. The Green New Deal, the farm-to-fork strategy, and in particular the carbon farming are big opportunities for agroforestry system, because agroforestry are able to combine carbon sequestration and food security in a more sustainable way. So will be very important for the future agricultural and cropping system in Europe. Bioeconomy-based products from trees and shrubs could be a new bioeconomy products for a sustainable food, and not food like feed, fiber, and other things for the future. But we know also that the full potential of agroforestry is not totally exploited. So we have to work hard to assess and create new data and new information and knowledge about agroforestry. There are some traits. There is at least so far several misunderstandings about the term agroforestry. So we need to work together to reduce this misunderstanding and clarify to all what is agroforestry is, and we also reduce the separation between agro and forestry CAP and rural development measure. We have to create a more sharing approach about this, but we know that what's missing is a huge change of vision of agriculture. In the last 50 years, we're passing from diversification to simplification and intensification on agricultural practices. Now it's time to change the vision, change the direction, go from intensification and simplification to diversification of the cropping system. And we know that this is not easy. So we have to do a lot of works and efforts to boost and increase the profitability and the sharing and widespreading of agroforestry. Just to conclude, we decide to select one question from the audience with the aim to create another question and increase the discussion and continue the discussion among all the participants. So the question is, do we need an European agroforestry strategy? And we can say that under our point of view, yes, we need an European agroforestry strategy to align DG Climate, DG Agri, DG Environment, and working together for a better agricultural production in the future. So that's all. Thanks for your attention, and thanks, Rico, for chairing this session. Thank you so much.
Justino, finally, your final remarks, please.
Here I am, Rico. Yes, thank you for giving me the floor. Now I share my screen to better explain the conclusion of this really intense 3-day of webinar. So, some conclusion. It's not easy to make the conclusion of a so intensive 3-day. I want to do this with sharing with you some word. We all now know that agroforestry is the deep interaction of woody vegetation, crop, and livestock on the same area of land. It's not a patchwork where you have the crop on one side, the forest in another side, and the livestock might be in a very intensive farm. Agroforestry is the three things together in the same area of land. And a very important thing that we now know, everybody know, is that agroforestry can be applied to all agricultural systems in all parts of Europe. It's not something that we can think about only in the mountain area, in the most marginal lands, somewhere in the country. Everywhere we can have agroforestry systems in Europe. And that was the past. We have a unique heritage of traditional agroforestry system with a high environmental and cultural value. But it's not only a question of environment and of culture, because this system, this very old system, are there since centuries. And why is that? Because they have a productive relevance. Europe shows also a high potential for innovative modern agroforestry. So looking forward, we know that there is a future for agroforestry. Could say that agroforestry is our future. And this system have been developed in the last decades by research and development activity all over Europe. And I want to underline that very often these have been possible because of a strict collaboration and cooperation with pioneering farmers. EURAF believe that on the basis of science demonstrations related to economic and ecological sustainability of agroforestry systems, the application of agroforestry practices must now be supported and fostered in a more courageous way, making Europe reach the ambitious goal of spreading agroforestry system to at least 50% of European farms in the next year. This is a statement that is fundamental for our organization. You can find this statement in the website of EURAF, and maybe somebody thinks that it's not realistic, but if we consider all the things that we have discussed in this 3 days, I think that it is absolutely realistic if we wanted to achieve the goal we have discussed. So, there is a famous film whose title is Back to Future, and it's time to go back to future. Because from the European Green Deal to the Farm to Fork strategy, from the biodiversity strategy to the forestry strategy, agroforestry is becoming unavoidable as a go-to solution to climate change mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and biodiversity. And as states Patrick Worm, best of all, it makes money too. So looking back to our future, we know that for centuries, the entire European continent has been an immense and highly varied agroforestry system. In time when the CAP didn't exist, farmers throughout Europe spontaneously used to choose agroforestry because it was and it is rational, intelligent, and convenient. So, only in the last few decades, crop, animals, and trees have been separated without accounting for the loss of biodiversity, landscape, organic matter, soil, and farm traditional knowledge. Now that we have to face the challenges of climate change, biodiversity conservation, soil protection, the time has come to make Europe agroforestal again. This is my last slide, and it is a tour next year towards Sardinia. The new CAP is a great opportunity we must catch. During this 3-day meeting, many obstacles have been highlighted, but also new signs for improvement have been launched. We'll deepen such introduction we'll deepen such indication during the next European Agroforestry Conference in Nuoro next year. Through such potential addresses, the debate of farmer, researcher, agriculture and forestry extensionists, policy and decision makers on agroforestry will be even more exciting and efficacious. Before closing this challenging webinar, I want to thank the many people who have dedicated themselves so that everything could go in the best way. And now, thanks to all those who followed us, and see you in the beautiful Sardinia next year. So this is the final word. It is a see you next year in Sardinia. We know the big problem that we actually have with COVID-19. We all know that we are not absolutely sure to be able to be there, but we deeply hope to see all of you next year in our Sardinia. See you. So, Rico, if you wanted to take the floor and to close the meeting, the floor it's yours.
There's not much to say. I would again thank everybody that hang out with us in this exciting 2 or almost 3 nice days. We have heard so much. I'm sure that many of us will go back into the resources that will be provided once they are given from given freedom from the presenters. and we can now stay in contact. We have learned a lot about the measure 8.2. We have learned about the new eco schemes that may come up. I think now it's up to each member state or everyone in his own possibilities to work and also lobby for agroforestry, do the research, provide the correct numbers.
Thank you very much to the organizers, the panelists, and especially the translators who have done an absolutely brilliant job.
Yeah, I agree with you, Patrick. Thank you very much to Samantha and Marta to have made a very, very brilliant work following us in our very speedy speeches during the morning. And I hope that all the things will get better for all of us in the next months. And I hope that we will meet at Nuoro in May 2021. So see you again, and good luck to everybody.
Turn on your cameras to say goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Fantastic event. Thank you very much.
Well done, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.